You know the feeling, right? Like you're sitting in traffic or maybe just waiting for your coffee, and you instinctively pull out your phone.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Every time.
Right. And you check off your morning goals on some beautifully designed habit tracker app, or you read an article on optimizing your diet, or, I don't know, maybe you even squeeze in a 10-minute guided meditation.
You're doing everything you're supposed to do.
Exactly. You are doing everything right. And yet there's this quiet, just undeniable emptiness lingering in the background. It feels like you're running a marathon on a treadmill of self-improvement, but the scenery never actually changes.
Yeah, that profound restlessness. I mean, it's arguably the defining undercurrent of our modern era.
It really is.
We have access to, more information, more comfort, and more psychological tools than any generation in human history.
So much more.
Right. We are constantly searching for meaning, constantly trying to fix that underlying unease, but instead of finding peace, we just end up feeling, well, more trapped and exhausted by the search itself.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We've been going through a massive stack of listener notes, translated lectures, and philosophical breakdowns centered around a thinker named Acharya Prashant.
Yeah, he's a fascinating figure.
He really is. He's a philosopher with a huge global following, and he specializes in translating ancient Eastern wisdom for our hyper-connected world. And our mission today is to unpack his completely counterintuitive approach to finding peace.
Because his diagnosis of our collective exhaustion is, frankly, going to sound backwards to a lot of people.
Yeah, it definitely did to me at first.
Prashant basically flips the entire premise of self-improvement on its head. He argues that our very search for fulfillment, like our desperate quest to find purpose and meaning, is actually the exact mechanism keeping us in bondage.
Wow.
Yeah. The core issue isn't that we haven't found the right answers yet. The issue is that we are failing to question the one who is asking the questions.
If you've ever felt overwhelmed by the sheer volume of choices you have to make every day, or, wondered why landing that dream job or ideal relationship didn't magically make you happy, this is going to resonate.
Totally.
We're exploring a concept known as non-duality. Okay, let's unpack this, because we need to start by understanding what non-duality actually means before we can figure out why we're so miserable.
Right. So non-duality, at its most mechanical level, is the understanding that the fundamental separation we feel between ourselves and the rest of the universe is an illusion.
An illusion, okay.
Yeah. I mean, we walk around experiencing life in duality, right? There is a me inside here looking out, and there's an objective world out there to be conquered or consumed or feared.
The whole subject-object divide.
Exactly. The subject-object divide. And Prashant points out that we live in an age of infinite choices, industrial production, the internet, artificial intelligence, where we have this endless buffet of objects to consume.
Just constant consumption.
But the material universe itself and all those choices, they aren't inherently bad. Like, prosperity isn't the enemy.
Right. The universe isn't broken. A smartphone isn't evil. A luxury car isn't inherently malicious.
No, not at all. The distortion lies entirely with the liquor. We operate under this delusion that we can extract subjective internal fulfillment from objective external things.
Oh, that's such a great way to put it.
We feel a disquiet inside,
Right.
a deep sense of being unwell or incomplete. So we look at the external world and think, let me try that new gadget or that new relationship or that new career milestone.
Like it's a Band-Aid.
Yeah. We are essentially trying to use an object to fix a subject. And mathematically, that equation never balances.
It's the ultimate hedonic treadmill. We're pushing ourselves to acquire more, but there's always a bottom to the bottle.
Always.
And what I found so compelling in these lectures is what happens when that strategy inevitably fails. Because when the material hustle burns us out, we usually pivot. We turn away from consumerism and we run straight into spirituality.
Oh, yeah. And we bring the exact same mindset with us.
We do.
It's just dressed in different clothes. The ego seamlessly adapts its strategy.
It's so true.
Yeah.
You trade in your stressful, high-stakes corporate suit for a, sustainable organic yoga mat. Mm-hmm. But you bring the exact same frantic competitive energy to the ashram.
You're comparing how long you can meditate compared to the guy sitting next to you.
Exactly. You're just consuming spiritual experiences now instead of physical goods. It really begs the question, is modern enlightenment really just the next hustle? Are we just trying to acquire peace the same way we acquired a promotion?
What's fascinating here is that the center hasn't actually changed at all. The same ego that was blindly chasing corporate milestones is now blindly chasing spiritual rituals.
Or the concept of good karma.
Right, or the identity of being healed. It's just another marketplace. The direction of the pursuit is still entirely outward. You are still trying to add an external concept to yourself to feel complete.
So the labels have changed, but it's a superficial cosmetic shift.
Completely cosmetic.
Because looking inward is terrifying.
Oh, it's the scariest thing you can do. Looking inward means addressing the seer. It means turning the lens onto the ego itself and addressing our own fundamental lies.
And for the ego, that's game over.
It is a death sentence. To look at the sufferer with total honesty is to reduce the suffering, sure, but it also reduces the ego itself. I mean, we would genuinely rather explore the deepest trenches of the ocean or build rockets to Mars than sit quietly and examine the illusion of our own central importance.
That is so wild to think about. Let's define this enemy then. Let's look at the seer. Prashant uses this brilliant analogy to explain the ego.
The bug analogy.
Yes. If the human body is a biological machine, the ego isn't the software. It's a bug. It's a literal manufacturing defect in our operating system.
And this bug has a clear origin, too, both biological and social. Biologically, when a body is born into this world, there naturally arises a primitive feeling of, I am. Even animals have a rudimentary version of this, just to ensure survival. If you think about it mechanically, we are tiny, highly vulnerable organisms thrust into a giant, infinitely powerful, totally indifferent universe.
Right. We're basically nothing in the grand scheme.
Exactly. So naturally, that tiny feeling of I am feels incredibly insecure. It feels incomplete, scared, and desperate to protect its borders.
That makes total sense. If you're a speck in the cosmos, your default state is going to be low-level panic.
Absolutely.
And then society steps in to help. Society says, don't worry about that existential dread. We have a bunch of patches for that bug.
Okay.
And it starts layering identities on top of the I am to make it feel bigger and safer.
Oh, the identity layers. Yes.
You are your gender. You are your nationality. You are your wealth bracket. You are your political affiliation. We use all these external concepts as armor, basically, to fortify this tiny, scared feeling of existence.
Which brings us to the most untested, unquestioned lie of human existence.
Oh, right. Let's get into this.
We pride ourselves on being rational creatures, right? If you have a strange, persistent pain in your stomach, you go to a physician. You run tests. You demand evidence before you proceed.
Obviously.
But we never test our fundamental feeling of, I exist as a separate entity. We just blindly accept the ego's claim that it is the absolute center of the universe.
We just take his word for it.
We do. We spend our entire lives trying to resolve the massive contradiction between the ego's claim of supreme importance and its constant nagging feeling of inadequacy.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because society doesn't treat this bug like an illness, do they? They actually reward it.
They absolutely reward it.
The lectures lay out this fascinating breakdown of how we disguise the symptoms of a sick operating system. We literally rename our psychological illnesses to feel better about them. We give them glorious, socially acceptable title.
Yeah, so for example, we feel an intense clawing insecurity, this desperate need to prove we are worth something because we secretly feel entirely worthless, and we relabel it ambition.
Oh, that one hurts.
Right. We applaud the relentless go-getter, deliberately ignoring that they're driven by a bottomless inner void that won't let them sleep at night.
We do it with everything. We
Yeah.
take attachment, dependency, and intense possessiveness,
Yeah.
basically the fear of being alone, and we put a nice bow on it and call it love.
Yeah.
Or we take this primal tribalism, this deep need to be part of an us so we can fight a them, and we elevate it to patriotism. Even something as stark as the mass slaughter of animals get softened and rebranded as a personal food choice.
Because the symptoms of our inner unwellness are oozing out of us constantly in our daily interactions.
They really are.
I mean, getting furious at someone cutting you off in traffic isn't about the speed of your commute. It's the ego feeling its imaginary boundary has been disrespected.
But to acknowledge that mechanism requires a level of honesty that threatens the bug.
Exactly. It requires admitting that what we proudly call my life, my choices, is actually just the frantic, predetermined thrashing of an insecure illusion.
So, okay, if the operating system has a bug, how do we write a patch? Prashant points heavily to ancient Eastern wisdom, specifically texts like the Upanishads and Vedanta, which are thousands of years old.
Right, but he completely subverts what we think these philosophies are for.
Yeah. Usually we go to ancient philosophy looking for a life hack. We want the 5 stoic steps to a better morning, or some comforting promise that everything happens for a reason.
But these texts don't offer any of that. In fact, they offer absolutely nothing. Nothing. They are entirely subtractive. They aren't an intellectual marketplace where you go to buy a better personality or a more decorated inner life.
Okay, so what do?
They exist purely to question, to negate, and to strip away.
Yeah.
They constantly force the reader to ask, this identity you are fiercely defending, is it actually real? Is it needed? Who is the one getting angry right now?
Wait, I have to stop right there. Formatting the hard drive and deleting all our identities? That sounds incredibly bleak to a modern listener.
It does sound bleak, I agree.
Right. Because if I delete my ambition, my attachments, my drive to be someone, doesn't that just leave me as a nihilist sitting in an empty room?
Yeah.
I mean, how do you function in society? How do you hold a job or date or care for a family if your hard drive is wiped clean?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it only appears bleak because we are deeply confused about our starting point. Think of Plato's cave.
Okay. The classic allegory.
Exactly. You have prisoners chained in a dark, damp cave since birth. They're staring at shadows cast on a wall, completely convinced that those shadows are reality.
Right.
In our modern context, those shadows are the quarterly earnings report, the argument on social media, the anxiety over getting older. We are living in a primitive, pitch-dark cave on the inside, completely chained by our compulsions.
Oh, wow.
But because we don't know anything else, we have falsely labeled our miserable state as bright and free.
So when subtractive wisdom comes in to dismantle our illusions, the truth looks dark only by contrast to our fake brightness.
Exactly.
Stepping out of the cave into the actual sun hurts your eyes.
It really does. If you assume you are already a sovereign, free individual making logical choices, then anything that challenges that feels like a violent attack.
Totally.
True freedom requires bearing the indignity of admitting that you are not actually free. When you decide to move to a new city, or take a new job, or buy a specific brand of clothes, you desperately want to believe that is your sovereign free will.
Of course we do.
But to see the mechanics behind it, to realize those choices are actually just the compulsions of an unfree, terrified ego trying to secure its status, that is humiliating.
Humiliating is the right word. We are walking around demanding external freedoms. We want political freedom, market freedom, freedom of speech. But we remain absolute slaves to our own inner compulsions.
Yes.
And pouring infinite external freedom into unfree, buggy operating systems is a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
We just use that external freedom to consume the planet and build weapons.
That's the reality of it.
Which brings us to the ultimate paradox of this philosophy, and perhaps the most jarring statement from the material. Meaning is bondage. Purpose is illusion.
It's a tough pill to swallow.
It's huge. It directly challenges the core tenet of modern self-actualization. We are culturally obsessed with finding our why. We are told from childhood that without a grand purpose, life is meaningless.
But the universe mechanics don't care about our narratives. We arise from the soil, we go back to it. The game of life plays itself, just like the turning of the seasons or planets maintaining their orbits.
The universe is just doing its thing.
Exactly. The ego is the only thing in the entire cosmos that insists it must meddle, that it must have a special, individualized script written just for it.
Meaning is bondage. Because meaning is what validates the ego's existence.
Precisely.
If there is a grand purpose I must fulfill, then I must be incredibly important. But non-duality points out that the realization that you are not indispensable to the universe is actually the ultimate relief.
It's a huge weight off your shoulders. The only valid purpose for this organism is liberation from all pocuses. Paradoxically, disappearing, withdrawing that egoic interference is the best thing that can happen to your life.
So just step back.
Yeah. When you stop trying to force the universe to validate your existence, you can actually just experience it.
But wait, I have to push back here. If nothing inherently matters and the universe just plays itself, doesn't that inevitably lead to apathy?
That's the common fear.
Right, because what about real-world crises? We have climate change, widening inequality, systemic injustices. Don't we have a moral obligation to take right action? If we just abandon all purpose, aren't we just selfishly letting the world burn while we sit back in a state of non-dual bliss?
It's the most natural objection, I get it, but it misunderstands how the damage is being done in the first place. Non-duality redefines right action.
Okay, how so?
Right action is not a new set of ethical rules from a manual. Right action is simply the withdrawal of egoic action. The problems we face in the world aren't born of our inaction. They are born of our frantic, ego-driven action.
It's action without the actor.
Yes. Take the macro example of climate change. We often think the solution requires massive new global summits, incredibly complex carbon capture technologies, and just, frantic intervention.
Or doing.
Right, more doing. But the root cause of the carbon emissions destroying the planet is the untested egoic belief that prosperity equals endless consumption.
The belief that a bigger SUV will fix my inner void.
Exactly. The belief that endless accumulation of fast fashion will finally make you feel complete. If you remove the ego's insatiable need to consume, the destruction stops. You don't have to force right action. It happens naturally when the wrong action ceases.
That is so powerful. And it scales down to our everyday lives, too. Think about office politics. When you are constantly maneuvering to get the credit, throwing colleagues under the bus because your ego needs the promotion to feel safe, you are creating a toxic environment.
Spot on.
If you remove the ego's desperate need for validation, you just do the work. The work becomes pure. Division is the only tool the ego has to sustain itself. This is me, that is you, this is my department, that is yours, this is humanity, that is nature.
And where there is division, discrimination, and violence inevitably follow. The philosophy doesn't say, here is a 10-point legislative plan to create equality. It says, remove the false internal division, and the external discrimination falls away automatically.
It just drops.
It's not about teaching an old ego new progressive tricks. It's about discontinuing the interference entirely. When the frantic doer vanishes, the deed that remains is naturally appropriate to the moment.
That makes perfect sense. It's not that you stop caring about the world, it's that the artificial barrier separating you from the world dissolves. You aren't protecting nature as some external object, you realize you are nature.
Yes, exactly.
But of course the ego fights this realization with everything it has. It needs that barrier to survive. It literally requires enemies. And the lectures pointed to an incredibly relevant modern example of this, our current cultural obsession with UFOs and non-human intelligence.
Oh, this part is brilliant. The current discourse around UAPs is fascinating from a psychological standpoint. Governments are releasing vague reports, the internet is buzzing with theories about non-human intelligence, and there is a palpable undercurrent of paranoia and anticipation.
And from a non-dual perspective, this is exactly the kind of drama the ego craves.
This raises an important question, right?
Yeah.
Because to the ego, everything outside its boundaries is an alien. Duality is built entirely on me versus the world.
So it needs something to fight.
If the ego is fearless, if it has nothing to defend against, the ego ceases to exist. It cannot survive without a threat to push back against. So it actively hunts for things to be paranoid about.
The phrasing we use is so telling. I am threatened. By feeling threatened by an impending alien invasion or a grand matrix simulation or a shadowy deep state conspiracy, the ego gets to reinforce the first two words of that sentence, I am.
Yes.
It proves its own existence through its victimhood.
We deeply want to believe that there are dark, organized forces out there deliberately hiding reality from us because that makes us the important protagonist of a cosmic thriller.
We get to be the star of the movie.
Exactly. It gives us a grand enemy. But there is no grand conspiracy hiding the truth. The stark reality of our existence is right in front of us. The distortion is entirely internal.
The seer is inebriated.
Yeah.
It's like you're holding up 4 fingers, but your vision is completely blurry from alcohol, so you see 7. Instead of just admitting you're drunk and your hardware is failing, you accuse the universe of conspiring to alter the fundamental laws of math just to mess with you.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
We are terrified of hypothetical aliens in the sky, completely ignoring the tragic irony that we are already aliens to ourselves.
So true.
We treat our own planet as an alien object to be extracted and mined. We treat animals as alien objects to be industrialized and consumed. We are entirely alienated from our own true nature.
Right.
We don't need a UFO disclosure to make us feel isolated. The bug in our operating system has already achieved total isolation perfectly.
So what does this all mean for us? If we zoom out and look at this entire journey we've taken today, our exhaustion, that treadmill we talked about at the very beginning while you were waiting for your coffee, it isn't going to be solved by optimizing your daily choices or finding a better productivity app.
Definitely not.
It isn't going to be solved by trading your corporate hustle for a spiritual hustle or by finally discovering your ultimate grand meaning in life.
No, it is solved by facing the mirror. The world does not need more meaning, more constructed purposes, or more grand narratives to fight over. It needs loads of mirror.
Just brutal honesty.
It requires the immense, terrifying courage to look at the bug in your own operating system, to rigorously examine that I am feeling, and realize that the separate center you've been operating from is false. True non-duality is simply seeing the falseness of the ego and letting the universe play its magnificent game without your constant, frantic interference.
Which brings us back to you listening to this. We've covered some incredibly deep foundational ground today, but I want to leave you with a final thought to take into your everyday life, a practical way to test this out for yourself.
I love this.
Next time you feel a sudden surge of righteous anger or deep clawing anxiety about a free choice, you feel you must make right this second, whether it's firing off a sarcastic reply in a work email, agonizing over a career pivot, or just that sudden urge to buy something online to feel a little bit better. Just pause. Take 1 second and ask yourself, is the universe actually demanding this action of you? Or is the bug in your system just picking a fight to prove it still exists? What would happen if, just for a moment, you stepped off the treadmill and let the game play itself without you?